How I came to know Jesus. It's kind of a long and winding road, but I'll make it really short. First of all, there was a prayer group I found out years later that was meeting in the Methodist Church in Milford that was praying for a bunch of a group of people in a band that had a house rented outside of Milford on Heiserman Road at the end of the lane. We even built a platform so we could have parties and sell beer, so to make money. So anyway, that's where we were, and it was at the point where actually, and I'm just giving you a picture, okay? I'm not trying to glorify this, but we would have parties, and the police would come, and they would tell us, look, whatever you're doing here is fine. Just keep it here. We'd rather you be here with all your friends and everybody here than be out on the streets. And they would leave us alone. But anyway, there was a fellow named Bill Otten, and he was associated with some folks that were at the United Methodist Church in Milford. And there was a group of them, of about 5 or 6, maybe 8. And they were praying for all the people at the Roach House, because I was in a band. I was a lead singer and guitar player in a band, along with Mike Otten, which is Anita Hensley's brother. And anyway, Bill got born again, and he started going to these prayer meetings. And he quit the band earlier. And so we would always talk, and he would drive me around at night. We'd ride around at night sometimes and talk. And so anyway, eventually what happened was the lead guitar, Mike, guitar player, he got born again. And he had a conflict with playing in a rock band, and which is understandable. And so he didn't want to do it anymore. And he was on his way out the door, sort of, and I was in pursuit of him because he taught me how to play guitar. He showed me my first chords when we were young. I was 15, and he was probably 13. But anyway, so I had this band, and we had high hopes and plans and all this stuff, like all bands do. And we would play at bars for money and things like that. And we didn't make a very big splash, okay? Locally, people knew us, and partly it was because of other things than the music. So anyway, so Mike got saved. He wanted to quit playing. And one by one, they all started, going to these prayer meetings in a house with Bill Otten and a fellow named Hal Chadwick. And so one day I came home from work. I was working at Swallen's. It was a department store. And I came home from work one day, and I walked into the Roach House. It was a 2-story old farmhouse. And on the left-hand side of the front door was a living room or parlor or something. It was old. And on the right-hand side was a bedroom. Anyway, on the left-hand side, we used to have couches lining the walls all the way around with a great big huge coffee table in the middle. And this was the party room. So in the other room, there was another room in the back where we had all the equipment set up, and we would just play every night, just about. And I came home from work, and I walked in that room, and normally you could see everybody smoking and drinking, all kind of things, okay? And I walked in the room, and the walls were painted from all the graffiti we had, and they were all sitting around with Bibles. And yeah, 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 you know. And I look at this and I walk in there and I think the first thing I thought, and I mumbled it to myself. I'm sure I did, because I do that. But I said, I got to do something about this. This ain't happening, you know. It was ruining all my plans. Okay. Sound familiar? Well, so I found out about these prayer meetings they were all going to in a house. And the sound man and myself, and the sound man's name was Ross, we were good buddies. And we were all good buddies, really. It was like a family. And so Ross and I were talking one night, and we go, man, we ain't going for this. You know, I said, I ain't going for this. He goes, no, I ain't either. I said, okay. So we're not going to do this save thing, okay? And we got to do something. And so anyway, we made a pact. That's what we were going to do. So we went to a prayer meeting to find out who this Hal guy was, Hal Chadwick, okay? And actually he was very foundational in putting a foundation under a lot of people's feet, and to walk with Jesus. And God used him a lot. He really did. And so we went to this prayer meeting, and Hal Chadwick was up there talking, and everybody was there, all my friends and everybody, you know, we're all in there packed in this family room, you know, this big family room. And of course, Ross and I were sitting in the back. But so we're watching, and then Hal Chadwick, you know, he gets his Bible out and he reads a verse. And so I thought, well, I'm going to get my Bible out and read it too, because I brought one. It was a Jehovah's Witness Bible. I was not a Jehovah's Witness, okay? And but I was open. I mean, at that point, I was spiritually open, and I can see this now, because I ran into a Hare Krishna guy outside of Swallens one day, and he's selling books. And I said, man, you know, I'd like to read about this, because I was a George Harrison fan, and, you know, Beatles. I'm dating myself, but I grew up in the 60s, okay? And so I thought, okay, I'm going to read this. I never have read any of this stuff. It all sounds kooky to me, and I can't believe he's doing that. But, you know, I'm going to read it and read some of it and see what's going on. And I read a little bit of it and was like, no, I can't get into this at all. You know, this is too far out. And so then I studied with Jehovah's Witnesses a little bit, because there was this really pretty girl I was interested in. And the only way I could see her was to go to their prayer group or their Bible study, okay? And so I had a Jehovah's Witness Bible, okay? That's how that came about, okay? Anyway, I was raised Roman Catholic. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But anyhow, so I opened my Jehovah's Witness Bible, and Hal Chadwick says, turn to the 3rd chapter of John, and we're going to read that. And so he's reading the whole story of Nicodemus. Okay, Jesus, the religious leader, came to Jesus at night and said, you know, we know God sent you. And actually, I put all that to music, but the John 3:3. When he read John 3:3, I about fell over, because I was looking at it and I thought, nobody has ever told me this. I have never heard this. You know, it was Jesus, okay? All right, duh. And you know, he told Nicodemus, unless a man is born again, you cannot see the kingdom of God. You cannot enter the kingdom of God unless you are born again. And so I read that scripture at that Bible study, and I thought, I have been ripped off. You know, what is this? I had no idea. I was dumbfounded. And so I kept reading that, and so I didn't get up and get saved because Ross and I made a pact, and I was always the guy, if I told you something, then I'm more than likely I'm going to do it. Now, I wasn't perfect, and so he says, okay, everybody bow your heads, we're going to bow your heads and raise your hand, that thing, and so I did. I bowed my head and sat there, and we were sitting all of us were sitting on the floor, and and I felt a presence or a power. I felt a nervousness, okay, and I knew something was going on, but I was bound and determined I am not raising my hand, okay, because I'm not doing that because Ross ain't going to do it, Well, he says, okay, everybody raise your heads, and whoever raised your hand, come up front. So I look up, and there's Ross walking up front. You know what I mean? It's like, what? And so, yeah. So anyway, so I started. I read that Bible a little bit, and that, and I kept thinking about that, and so I was at work one day, and I heard about, everybody was talking about this healing movie by T.L. Osborne that was going to be shown, and I thought, I was really curious about that. And I thought, man, I really want to see this healing thing. I would like to check this out. I really want to go. And it was on a Friday night. I had to work late on Friday night at Swallen's, a department store. They stay open until 9 o'clock. And so I'm walking around my little area, the store by myself, and acting like I'm working. And so, and I mumble a prayer to the Lord. I said, Jesus, Jehovah, God. Fortunately, I named all the right names. And so I said, if you are real, if this is real, if this born again thing is real, I really want to go to that movie tonight. I want to see that. You get me off work and I'll go to that movie. And I'll get saved. I'll go up front. I barely got those, I whispered the words. I barely got those words out of my mouth. And the manager of the department came up, which I found out later was backslidden Pentecostal. And he said, it was like instant. It's like I turned around and there he was. It's like, okay. I was kind of startled. And he goes, you want to take off tonight and work tomorrow night instead? Switch with me? I started laughing at him. He goes, what? I thought, man, he heard me. I must have prayed out loud and didn't know it. And I said, yeah, sure. Yeah, okay. Because I thought he was messing with me, And but he wasn't messing with me. And so I left and I went straight to that meeting. It started at 7. It took me about an hour to get there because I was working in Tri-County, Swallen's. And so I went in there and we were watching the movie, and it was and T.L. Osborne was, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's a great man of God, a great missionary, and God did some wonderful things through him. I always loved him, and loved listening to him. But since then, anyway, and then so I went up front, and I said the prayer and did everything, and left, and everybody was just wildly happy for me, because all my friends were there. The whole group was there. There was about 25 of us that hung out at the Roach House all the time, and they all got born again. All of them. Now, some of them, yeah, that's awesome. And God does that. But some of them haven't made it. Quite a few haven't made it, actually. And I'm not happy to say that. Because you got to walk the walk. There's the seed falls on good ground and hard ground and soft ground, and we were the whole mix, all of us. And so then I went back to Swallens the next day to work. Well, first we went out to celebrate. We went to somebody's house, play ping pong, because we were into ping pong. And the drummer was awesome at it. But he was something. His name was Paul Brown. But so I stopped and got a bottle of wine to celebrate, That's what you do. I was raised Catholic. Salt and pepper on the kitchen table and beer, or something. It was just always there at a celebration. But yeah, that was odd. But I took a drink of it. I didn't really feel right about it anymore, And of course, Mike gave me the look. Your brother Mike, he goes. He gives me that look, like, what are you doing? But so I went back to work the next day, and I thought, Lord, I didn't say Lord, I thought to myself, well, now what am I going to do? It's gone. The music is gone. You know what I mean? The thoughts of that and just using that was just, I thought, well, I'm going to go over to the record department. It was right next to where I was at in the hardware, and see what's in the bin. Okay, see what kind of records are in there. And so I walked over there, thinking I'll probably find Tennessee Ernie Ford, and yeah, you know what I mean, and things like that. Stuff that was totally not my style or abilities. But I get over there and I see all these records. Back then there were records, vinyl, and it was Larry Norman, Randy Stonehill, Petra, Honey Tree was one of them. I didn't buy her album. I wasn't into Honey Tree too much. She was good, but I bought the Petra, and I bought a guy's named John Michael Talbot, and Larry Norman. And I'm looking at this Larry Norman album when I first saw it, and here's this guy standing there with long hair down to here, blonde, bright hair. And the title of the album was In Another Land. And I thought, okay. So I listened to that when I got home, and I loved it. And it was great. And all the rest of them were great too. And then I thought I had some hope. I thought, wow, maybe there's something here after all, Isn't the Lord good that way? That you give him something that is valuable and precious to you. And what he does is he'll take it and he'll break it and he'll bless it and he'll feed a multitude with it. And that's what he's done in my life. And he can do it in your life. And if you have not been born again, and if you're thinking in your brain right now, Born again? Isn't that an old cliche from the 70s? No. Jesus said that. And whenever you're in doubt about anything that you feel it might be of God or isn't of God, go to those red letters in that Bible and read what Jesus says. And it'll get cleared up for you really quick. You know? He's the man. And he's the Lord. And later on in years, this is just a tidbit. This is a nugget, but there was a singer back in the 70s that was pretty popular, and he had a church in Tulsa, Oklahoma when we went there, and he prophesied over me, and I don't think he realized he was doing that at the time, because we were at a church gathering, and it was a swim party. Everybody was in the pool, and we were all swimming. He comes, we're talking. We went up, talked, and he said, you know, because I led worship at his church once or twice, and some other things, but I won't get into that. But he said, John, he said, the Lord has put it in your basket. Some fishes and some loaves. He's put some things in your basket. And you all have things in your baskets. We all have baskets. And I want to really bring this home to you this morning, that you have in your basket fishes and loaves. They aren't much. I mean, it was a kid's lunch, and the fish were probably really small. And so was the loaves. But we all have fishes and loaves in our baskets that he can use. And you say, well, how do I identify that? And it's like, well, here's an easy way. It's not a Myers-Briggs test, although those are good, but here's a quick, easy way to identify what's in your basket. Whatever you hold valuable and precious, whatever you hold valuable and precious, you will serve others with. And the Lord will bless you with it. And over the years, what he spoke to me has come to pass. And there's been times I've been called on. He said, people are going to ask you from time to time to share what's in that basket. I know what he meant. He meant the songs, and he meant the music, and he meant the testimony of him. And all my life, it's been that way. All my life. Well, there was an 8-year period when I call it my Jonah days, okay, when I got disenchanted with things and I just backed off and moved to the far away as I could, because there was 2 things I wanted to know. I wanted to know, is this really real, what you're doing or want to do, or am I just made a mistake? And he always brings it back around. And last week he brought it back again. And it's a fresh oil. And so So I'm here to tell you, I'm 69 years old. I'll be 70 in October. And all my life, he has been faithful.